everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video, I'm going back to my roots, I feel like, and talking about some of my favorite series. So, book series, we're talking about books. I've done a book series video before where I talked about some of my favorite book series. Number one, I didn't literally list them from my top to my bottom favorites. My perspective has kind of changed. So I wanted to do this video with you guys because I love doing book videos. I love talking about reading. I'm a huge bookworm. So I have a list. I'm ready to go. I'm going to tell you guys my favorite series, and definitely let me know down below your favorite series if there's any that I don't mention in this video so that I can read them, because if you've ever watched any of my favorite books videos, you know series are my shit. I love series because there's way more character development. You can get really attached to a character and it's great. So let's get started. I'm actually going to start with my favorite series and work my way down. Let's start from the top. My number one favorite series, and these are all fantasy. So on the top of my list is, can you guess? I don't know. It's A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin, aka Game of Thrones. I love this series. There's still at least one more book, maybe more to come in the series, and it has definitely been my most beloved series, especially in the later part of my life, and I love it. It is so fantastically written, so interesting and easy to read in the sense that yeah, it's dense, yeah, there's a lot to it, but you can get through that shit really easily. It's so action-packed. George R.R. Martin is the most fearless writer I've ever experienced. He's just not afraid to get rid of our favorite characters for the sake of the story, and I absolutely love the series. The TV series is also wonderful, and I definitely also recommend watching it. I didn't like it in the beginning because I felt like it strayed too far from the books, but now I'm kind of this acceptance that they're just two kind of separate things, and I try not to compare them or anything like that, because then I get upset sometimes if it's not the same. And if you have not read it, girls, men, gentlemen, whoever you are, please help yourself, because it's a fantastic series and it'll take you a while to get through, so that's great too. Okay, my second favorite fantasy series should also come as no surprise if you know me, and it's Harry Potter. Now, it was really hard for me to decide between the two of those series, A Song of Ice and Fire and Harry Potter. Harry Potter was something I grew up on, and I literally it was a part of my identity as a young person, was my love of Harry Potter and reading all the books, going to see all the movies, and I will forever have a very special place in my heart for Harry Potter, because although I haven't read it in a really long time, that is something that gave me so much joy as a young teenager, and I love J.K. Rowling. I think that she totally changed the game with those books. What made me choose Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire as number one rather than Harry Potter is simply the fact that I feel like with Game of Thrones, the whole series is written at the same level of intensity and detail, and yeah, maybe over time it gets a little bit better, but with Harry Potter it's almost like night and day with the first book and then the seventh book. The first book is really catered to children, and then you have the seventh book, which is catered to a wider audience. And so for me, the consistency of the writing style is what made me choose A Song of Ice and Fire rather than Harry Potter. But it's still I mean, I can't even tell you how much I love Harry Potter. Choosing between them really physically hurts me, so I'm not even going to talk about it anymore. But again, if you haven't read Harry Potter, pick up a book. Okay, my third favorite series is The Lord of the Rings. I read this series actually all in one week. I read the whole series in 1 week because I had mono. I was super sick. It was in high school, I remember. And I remember reading it and expecting it at first to be like Harry Potter, because people kind of talked about the two sort of together in a way, and I was like, this is not like Harry Potter at all. This is much more intense, much more adult driven, I guess. It was more catered to an older audience, and I really liked that. The language is more complex. It's just the most fantastic world that was created, and I mean, in all these series I'm going to talk about, they create such a fantastic world that it feels real. That's what, like, for me with Game of Thrones, it's like, that feels real to me. And then they bring in dragons and I'm like, holy shit, no, this is fantasy. Whereas Harry Potter feels very fantasy, Lord of the Rings feels also very fantasy, but I love that they all create their own totally, like, unique universe, and I love it. Just definitely check out Lord of the Rings. It's so good. Okay, number 4, I wanted to mention 2 series by the same author, Brandon Sanderson, and I got really into him last year, 2016, and then the beginning of this year. My favorite series that he's done is not actually complete yet. It's the Stormlight Archive. So, okay, here's the thing. This is kind of interesting. There's only one of these books out right now, I'm pretty sure, and I've only read one, but I loved it. Like, I could not get enough. I seriously loved it. So I'm rating this number 4, even though I haven't read the whole series. So this video might need to be updated at some point, because if it really falls flat, that'll be really sad. But this is a phenomenal series, and again, the world that he creates in this is just like, it blows my mind. It's amazing. And then the 5th series, also by Brandon Sanderson, that I want to mention is Mistborn. This series is also amazing. I love that it had a female protagonist, because most of the other series I'm going to talk about have a male protagonist, and as much as I like still enjoyed those books, not so much in Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones is very like diverse. For me, having that female character was so much more powerful in a lot of ways, and I also just loved her strength. Like, how much more admirable could that be? Like, honestly, like, I remember reading it and be like, what a fucking strong bitch. Like, honestly, like, I love her, and I was rooting for her, and she was so brave, and just, yeah. So definitely Mistborn. That's an amazing series. I own the whole series, and I love it. Highly recommend. Number 6, we're going to talk about Patrick Rothfuss, and this is the King Killer Chronicle. Also not completed yet. There's 2 books. I own both of them. The 3rd one is yet to come. And this is another series I read after I finished Game of Thrones, and I was like waiting for something else, like to fill that void, and nothing else could fill it. Because for me, when I finish a big series that's like so fantastic, like a Game of Thrones, I could not read like just a regular fiction. I needed more fantasy, and nothing was like getting there for me until I read Patrick Rothfuss. And I'm not rating this higher because I don't know how it's gonna end. Just from the 2 books in the series, they're amazing. And again, it's like he creates such a fantastical world that I can't imagine having that much of an imagination. Like, I honestly can't even fathom it, but I'm so grateful that he does. It makes reading the books so much more enjoyable because he has created such a believable fantasy world, which is like kind of hard to even imagine, but it's believably fake. It almost could be real. You know what I mean? Like, you think, oh, that, you know, that could be real. It makes sense. It's not like illogical or like so out of nowhere that it's like, I can't even understand that, but you know what I mean. Anyways, highly recommend. Very well written. Very, very easy to get through. Number 7 is the Red Rising trilogy by Pierce Brown. Now, this series I have had a love-hate relationship with. I've done a whole video talking about that. I read the first like 200 pages of the first book and I was like, this is actual shit. But then I kept reading and I was like, actually, hold on a second. This is amazing. I just loved the relationships that were formed in that book and that series. I thought that they were really beautiful relationships and real relationships and things that like I can understand being in like the real world versus like someone in a fantasy book. And just in general, he creates such lovable, wonderful characters. And that's what makes me come back and keep reading, is like having characters that I can relate to or really love and want to root for. That's what keeps me wanting to read a book, and also really well written, except for the first 200 pages of the first book. Like, what in the hell? I don't know. That's why it's like lower on the list. Number 8 is The Hunger Games. So The Hunger Games I read when I was in high school, and it was when the first movie was about to come out, and I heard about the series and I was like, I need to read this. And it was so good, especially like as a young person. This world that's so fantastical, but also in some ways so believable, especially with all the political unrest and everything that's going on in the world right now. To me, I remember reading it and being like, this could almost happen. Like in a scary way. Not so much like the actual Hunger Games, but like the way that their world was split by districts, I almost thought like this could be real in a way, and it almost already is reality. We just don't have names for it, or we don't name it like District 1 or District 10 or whatever. Katniss is like, again, a female protagonist that I loved and really identified with, that like fire in her that I've also felt a lot of the time as a young woman. You know what I loved about her? Was the fact that she didn't ask for any of that shit. Like, she didn't go out there being like, I'm gonna change this world that I'm living in. She went out there to protect her family, which is like the most noble thing you can do. And then she goes on to kind of unintentionally change the way that whole world functions. And I think for me, that was like the most beautiful thing, because her intentions were so pure and her impact was so huge because of her just being her. And that's what I loved about it. The authenticity is amazing. And I think when I have children, like, all these series are things I want to pass down to them, but especially if I have a daughter one day, I want her to read this book, because it's like, I don't know, I think this is like what it means to be a woman. Take hold of your own future, take hold of your own reality, and like make it what you want it to be. So those were my top 8 favorite fantasy book series. I hope you guys found this enjoyable. Have some books on your list now. The great thing about these being series is it's not just one book I'm mentioning. I'm literally listing like 3 books for each series, even though some of these series aren't complete yet. But lots of books to read, guys. You got a big reading list. So let me know down below if you've read any of these series I mentioned, any of these books, what your thoughts are, your favorite series, all that stuff down below in the comments. And I think that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you all very, very soon. Bye!